Hello and welcome back to the 11th episode of Thrive, where wellbeing converges, your source for expert insights and advice on all things mental health and wellbeing. This month is actually a very special episode. We're going to be talking about NAIDOC, celebrating First Nations peoples and communities, and also acknowledging the challenges that these types of communities still face. And we're actually joined by a guest you might be familiar with. So if you haven't seen our January episode, definitely head back and have a look. I'll put it in the show notes for everyone to go back there. But we've got James Cripps, our First Nations lead. Thank you so much for jumping back on board.
Thanks, Curtis. Thanks for the invite.
Oh, anytime. Maybe for the people who haven't actually listened to our first episode, just to give us a bit of insight on your experience and your background.
Yeah, from the Palawa Nation, James Cripps, way down south, Cape Barren, Flinders Island, Tasmania, and I'm on board with Converge as a principal consultant, First Nations lead.
Brilliant, awesome. So, like I said, as I prefaced before, we're going to be talking about NAIDOC this week because obviously, July marks the start of NAIDOC, and we're going to really unpack what that means to First Nations people and why we should be celebrating NAIDOC Week every week. So, my first question for you, James, is what does NAIDOC Week mean to you personally, and how do you like to celebrate it?
Oh, well, how do I like to celebrate is with people, with community. It's an opportunity to come together and celebrate the magnificent achievements that we've all participated in, both First Nations and our wider community. Yeah. And it's an opportunity to attend a multi-facet of events throughout the week.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah.
It's an opportunity to get exposed to First Nations culture and learn a bit about the history, but also around sharing ideas and sharing customs and participating in the event and not just the culture, but actually immersing yourself in the foods and the dance and just connecting with people.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. So how do you like to stay connected to your culture, and what role does cultural identity play in your day-to-day life and work?
Yeah, got to be connected to the country that I'm working on, and that's at the moment it's wonderful, beautiful Calcadoon country, far northwest Queensland, and for me it's connecting with people, it's seeing people at their best, not always at their worst, and I think if you can do that, the community will invite you in and share their experiences. Connecting with culture, making sure that I'm participating, an active participant in the culture, in the community, and sharing my expertise as well as learning along the way.
Yeah. Brilliant. So obviously you spoke a little bit just before in our first question about immersing ourselves in the week and the activities. What sort of things can people actually get involved in during NAIDOC Week?
Oh, look, just check what your local council has on. If you've got a Aboriginal community centre, First Nations community centre, get down there. It's an opportunity to immerse yourself in both Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures. Mm-hmm. And not just over that week, have a think about what you don't know and who you can connect with in your community. And just start that journey of learning and connecting with people. And taking a real personal responsibility that, Australia is a big country. It's made up of a lot of multicultural communities, and our First Nations people are there, part of that community and willing to share their culture.
Yeah, definitely. So when you sort of say like approaching the learning and whatnot, because I think everyone needs to actually take the time to learn about, the culture and the land that we all live on, and the heritage that's deeply rooted within that land. Who do you really think that that we should be talking to and learning from, and ultimately listening and actively listening?
Yeah, really good question. I think to start with just knowing where you are, like where's this building situated on, what the country, whose country are we standing on today? Just starting that sort of process of doing some investigation, looking at who the First Nations people are of your community, and simple little things about recognition, acknowledging the country that you're standing on, acknowledging the First Nations people as the traditional custodians, traditional owners, and that starts the journey. And I think we can all take a part in that by celebrating and introducing ourselves on country, um, making sure that we have a relationship with the country itself and the people.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, you've talked a little bit, when people go, and hopefully, I definitely recommend everyone watching or listening heads and watches our first episode. But you talked quite a lot about acknowledgement to country. How important is that?
Look, it sets the scene. I know we said it in that session, that episode, but if you go back and watch it, it's about at every or any opportunity you can get to acknowledge the country you're on. That's the first step, and you're not just acknowledging the country, you're acknowledging the local people who are the traditional custodians of that land. And it's a real scene setter for me when I go into meetings or I'm in the community, and just setting starting the scene setting with that simple acknowledgement to country. You're welcoming all people. You're welcoming all cultures. You're acknowledging those First Nations people, and from that, I think it's not robotic. It's natural. It's something that we can say at any opportunity we can, and it goes a long way, particularly for First Nations people who hear or witness you doing that. And it's not robotic. It's got to mean something. So for me, when I do an acknowledgement, it's from the heart. I acknowledge the people, the First Nations people. I cherish the beautiful country that we all meet on today, and I acknowledge those elders, past and present, and all those leaders that we have in the community. So we've sort of dropped that. You might have heard the emerging leaders. We've sort of put a line through that because we're not emerging, we're fair there, and we've got a number of leaders out there that we can connect with and introduce them into our workplaces and our communities and share that knowledge.
Yeah, definitely. That's actually a really key point, I guess. Yeah, it's definitely, because you do, I think that was added. So is that now being sort of repealed, I guess?
Yeah, we dropped it because we're no longer emerging. We're there. We've got some really good leaders amongst our people, our communities, and I think those are when we used to say emerging leaders. I think what we're really saying back then was we nurture people to become leaders. So we've run a line through the emerging bit, and now we're fair there. We've got some wonderful young leaders coming up through the ranks to very senior people within the community that we can tap into. Our organisation's doing that at the moment. We're building those real sustainable partnerships with local Aboriginal communities, and I think that's it can only enrich the organisation. It influences us how we do our business better. And I said it in the last session, episode. If we get the culture right, meaning if we connect with First Nations people from the get-go, then our business will flow.
Yeah, definitely. Just realised I didn't turn the lights on. Sorry. So said it can cut this bit. That's why I left a little break.
Okay.
Sorry.
Normally less.
Will that show up?
It's alright because we only just started.
I didn't even realize. I was looking at them before thinking...
Yeah, sorry.
Do I have to start again?
We'll cut that bit and then hopefully it's not too...
You might be able to brighten it up.
Yeah, it'll be fine. Okay. Sorry, Cecilia. I'll just take a quick pause and then we'll jump to the next one.
Okay.
Brilliant.
Good. Was that okay?
Yeah, no, you're doing awesome. That's my fault.
Okay. Very good.
All set. Brilliant. Okay. Right. So, James, what are some of the incredible strengths and achievements of First Nations communities that you think more people should know about? Because obviously, we like to be prepared at Converge. We're filming this actually on the first day of Reconciliation Action Week. We've got Marbo Day coming up as well, and National Sorry Day. I think it was last month or this month. What do you think that there's obviously the big milestones, but what are some of the ones that people may not know a lot about that they should?
I think the milestones are again where we've got to now. Like we've overcome a significant 12 months with the referendum, the Yes No campaign, and I think the milestone is to to build upon relationships and meaningful relationships with Aboriginal communities. This helps our business, like even the way we deliver services, the way we interact with our customers and our clients. Having a First Nations voice at every level of the business is just so crucial if we want to reach those longer lasting permanent outcomes for people and communities.
Yeah, definitely. And can you share a recent moment or initiative that made you feel really proud to be part of your community?
Oh, look, giving space, running yarning circles in the local community gives opportunities for voices to flourish within that community. It's time and space. It gives elders a voice. It gives the young people a voice. Being part of the consultation process to any community brings strength and ownership and a sense of belonging. At any opportunity we can provide that space, we should, both at a community-based level right through to a business environment.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, you lead a lot of, some of the stuff that Converge does. I think you've been working with some key organisations on different sort of initiatives and things like that. Driving that First Nations relationship. What do you think businesses can do, and even just the general population? A lot of our listeners could be, hire managers, could be, sort of just general team members. What can we all do, I guess, on a business front and a personal front to do more?
Well, a lot of the work that's taken place that we're delivering to a whole range of different organisations, government, non-government, public sector, private, is we're seeing a need, an opportunity for organisations who invite us in to put some things in place that will support their First Nation workers. And that support is not waiting for things to get to the pointy end, not waiting for things to build up, to try and prevent. We used to try and work in the early intervention space, but we're going to take another step forward and work in the maintenance space.
Okay.
So rather than waiting for things to develop, whether it's cultural load, colonised load, or other, we're suggesting and we're implementing group supervision or yarning circles, and they're an opportunity for 15 or more people to come together in a session to bring things to the table, solution focus opportunities in those sessions, and come back or walk away with some recommendations. That's just one layer. The second layer under that is the one-on-one support, so the yarn ups that we're delivering across the country. They're one-on-one sessions with a First Nations qualified practitioner, and they give opportunities to work on, for them to bring to the table organisational issues, practice standards, personal, as well as the cultural elements to that as well. And what I mean by that is, if I'm experiencing cultural or family business issues outside the work, it's going to impact me on the job.
Yeah,
so it just makes sense for us to be able to have a space to certainly talk about the work, the challenges with the work, talk about some of the things that are really working well for me on the job, but also with the trained practitioner, First Nations, male or female, I can talk about stuff that's happening in the community. It could be the overload of sorry business, which is constant, I've got to say, and any other sort of cultural issues that come up for me. Because, like I said, anything outside in the community that's taking place, and I've got to deal with that, it certainly impacts me on the job.
Yeah.
So having an outlet to be able to do that.
Yeah, because there's like a blend of, we always talk about, obviously, in the podcast and just in general, is that, your personal and your work life are so merged. You don't really have, because, we all try and strive for that work-life balance, but a lot of the reason why we do what we do is because it's deeply ingrained in us, and that's what we want to do. So yeah, I think that's a really key point, to be honest. Yeah, is just being able to have that your personal and your work life and have those connections and whatnot, and actually being able to build upon that so that your work life's not impacted and your personal life's not impacted, and you're able to build a positive well-being and connection to land. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's got to be part of those sessions because you're absolutely right. What happens is, um, yeah, my culture's so damn important to me. I don't leave it at the door when I come to work. It's part of me and who I am. It's my connection. Um, the work side of things for me personally, the work's great. The work is I really enjoy it. Um, it's what I love to do. It's that load that comes with it when I've got, we hear the term cultural load. Well, for me, it's not actual cultural load. It's stuff that's happening outside of the work that I do need to deal with, and that loads me. So if I'm coming to work and not having an outlet where I can talk to someone at a professional level, but also at a cultural level, to give me ideas or suggestions, or even if I just want to debrief about some of those things that are happening for me, it will impact on me, both professionally, personally, and culturally. So everything, all our services, all our engagements, all our group sessions, our one-on-ones must have culture first. So yeah, like I said, I don't leave it at the door. It comes with me, and that's why we employ First Nations people to flavour the business with the First Nations engagement techniques, strategies, whatever you want to call it. But it's so important, and that's why we employ First Nations people into our business, because we want those. We want that element as part of the business.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's also a key point as well, is actually ensuring that you're offering opportunities to First Nations peoples as well, like from a business standpoint, and giving them clear development plans like you would anyone else, and giving people opportunities to actually rise up the ranks and achieve amazing things. Like what's your sort of viewpoint on that, and making sure that people are actually, businesses, are actually, building around multicultural, diverse people?
Yeah, look, it's a strategy we work on with a lot of our clients is, yeah, sure, it's great. We want to get people at all levels. So we encourage people to have a relationship with your education departments, your universities. There's some great First Nations people out there coming through uni. You want to grab them as quickly and make that transition from school to work life as easy as possible. So that's one level. So being able to get people early, get them on board, provide them a space where they can grow and be supported and flourish. But also middle management, executive level, and even at board level. So trying to flavour Aboriginal voices, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voices throughout everything that we do. And we talked about immersing the business in that. That's the best cultural awareness tool you could ever think of, is being able to employ people and watch them grow at all levels.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, definitely. So, what are some of the biggest challenges still facing First Nations people today, either in broader society and even just in the workplace as well?
Well, there's the covert sort of roll-off discrimination from some of the referendum last year, or mindsets that came from that. Regardless of whether you were the yes or no side of things, I don't think there was any winners in that. It sort of created a lot of confusion for communities in general. Of what does that mean? How do we respond to that? So the challenges are now we must regroup as communities, both First Nations and non-Indigenous peoples, and come together around, particularly around reconciliation week and NAIDOC, but not just those 2 weeks. Throughout the year, we need to start really connecting and listening to people, and not just listening, but actually responding in a way that voices are heard. And I think the challenge now is that we, as organisations, as businesses, need to start taking some of those positive risks and not being scared to get it wrong. Engaging with communities. Some organisations haven't done that so well, or they're a bit cautious about doing that. But having formed forming really, like I keep going back to genuine partnerships with people and communities and organisations. I think that's probably a step forward, and inviting their voices in how we should be responding and delivering services on their country.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. So how can non-Indigenous Australians be better allies, not just during NAIDOC week, but all year round? So it's like that case in point you keep saying is we should be celebrating NAIDOC week every week.
Yeah. Look, being able to form those relationships, I think, is a really important one. I know in Converge we've got a number of First Nations practitioners. Being able to connect with those. If you're an organisation that's a bit low on employment for First Nations people, go out and connect with First Nations businesses. There's a number of organisations such as Supply Nation, which is a registered body of all First Nations, or most. I've got a very large list of First Nations people on that you can get online. So that's Supply Nation if you want to connect up with people. Supply Nation, I won't talk too much about it, but it's a platform where you can get all sorts of services, First Nations specific, services through from health, housing, education, consultancy. Certainly at Converge, we've tapped into Supply Nation. But generally speaking, taking a risk, going out there, meeting people, connecting up with your local First Nations community centres, and forming those relationships.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to relying on awareness training. That's the best form of awareness training, is going, connecting with people, and actively participating.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose it's like just get out there and immerse yourself. Yeah, just go and talk to people, go and learn as much as you can, and study up online, talk to actual First Nations people and learn all about their culture and heritage. Understand the land that you live on, that you walk on, and that we all cherish. Definitely. I think that's super important. And I quite like as well the point as well that you were talking about before is being more proactive rather than reactive. So don't wait for something to happen. Actually go out there and learn.
So important. And the mindset of our clients are that they're getting it. It's cheaper. Like you end up on this treadmill of recruitment. You need to work out why people aren't staying or people are disgruntled. And it could be nothing to do with the business. It could be, like I said, outside stuff. And if you put some of these things in place, like I said, the maintenance. And I think mainstream organisations do it really well. We've always had one-on-one support. We've always had group support. For First Nations people in general, it's a little bit unfamiliar. I think, for myself, going back a few years now, but I had to really take responsibility for my own professional wellness and my own cultural wellness, and break the stigma that I had about, why do I need regular support? Like, it's just a job. I can do the job. So I was always working in that space where things were building up, and then I have to have a break. Whereas if you have the maintenance in progress, so for instance, I get fortnightly catch-ups with my line manager. It's only a touch base, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I get monthly supervision, which is absolutely gold. And supervision includes all those things I mentioned before, the professional aspects, the business side, making sure that any issues that are coming up for me on the job, I can talk about it without getting any repercussions. And I might need extra training. I might need to co-work with somebody. I might need to shadow work with somebody over in a particular area so that I can build my skills up. That's just what should happen. Like, it's not a professional supervision isn't to check out what deficits I have. It's about ongoing support, bit of coaching, bit of mentoring, and an opportunity to say things in a safe space. I might be struggling with a particular part of the job, or I might have some community business I need to deal with. It's an opportunity to do that. So that's once a month for an hour. And I also, at my own cost, have an external supervisor. Again, it's gold. That person's works in a similar field, qualified social worker. He's First Nations, and he belongs to my community. So it ticks a few boxes there in good ways. As well as, the other things that are part of this maintenance is I need to get back on country regularly. I need to connect with my people and culture. I need to do stuff outside of work, such as the community yarning circles that we run once a month. Those sorts of things keep me strong, keep me healthy, and that, like I said before, if I'm strong and healthy on the outside, then on the job I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you've already alluded to this already, and you've talked at length about workplace changes and whatnot. But I kind of want to summarise and have a very clear sort of a point of what are specific supports that workplaces should be offering, and what changes would you like to see?
Oh, look, the investing in First Nations employees is absolutely key. A lot of the work that I do is about preventing that treadmill of recruitment. So working closely with organisations around making sure that things are in place to wrap around the employee. That is that professional side of it and that cultural element I said, but also going a step forward further and the organisation actually connecting with community. At the end of the day, we want our organisations to be a safe place. We want people to be attracted to our organisation. We want people to think, uncle and aunt over there work for that mob over there, and they're all right. And word of mouth gets around, and if we're seen to be, getting the culture right, then our business and our employment of people and keeping people longer and will be good as well. And I don't mean that we have to keep people for 20 years. I think it's okay for an organisation to be an entry point for people as well. So if you're an organisation that you're attracting people from university or straight off the country, that's a good thing. And if we're able to train and invest them and they move on, I think that's the way to go.
Because be more proud, I guess, that you've built up this person, you've given the skill set, and now they're actually going on to even bigger, better things. Yeah, it's having that pride.
Yes, and that's different to the treadmill of recruitment. That's not that. It's something else. That's something really important. It means we're taking an active role in growing people and in that genuine capacity I mentioned before.
Yeah, definitely. So why is First Nations representation vital to leadership, media, policy, etc., and what difference does it make?
It's vitally important to have voices at those levels. I guess previously or historically, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have things done to them. Policies are made and without their consultation, and they're imposed on them. Past government policies, and you could roll off a whole list, the forced removal of children, colonisation of communities, removal of entire communities and relocating them to another country. All these historical past policies really impact on people still today. And so the importance of having voices at those levels, whatever policies and procedures we're making internally, it means that we're going to get it right the first time. We're not imposing things on people. For example, we rewrote or we redeveloped an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community engagement policy just recently. And that's changed the way we engage with people, even from a clinical point of view, how we ask questions, what language we use. We don't just work with the individual sitting across the table from us. We work with them, the people standing behind them, their families, their communities. So it's a real different approach to the clinical mainstream medical model. It's that social emotional well-being model of care together with the clinical model was just one example that we're doing in Converge, and that bridges the gap between the clinical and the cultural, because you've got that social emotional well-being element to it.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think as well, like if we look at the historical, evidence that you just obviously spoke about before, when we look at things like stolen generation and stuff like that, where there's still a lot of generational guilt and mental health issues impacting a lot of First Nations people, even in this day and age, and that's so tricky to overcome, and having those support avenues in place.
Absolutely overwhelming still, and you do hear the argument that it was so long ago, but it ripples through communities still, even to our young people, because they hear the old ones talk their stories, and it's all that intergenerational trauma that's being passed on to the next generation. And so, stolen generation is so huge. We've got the over in Victoria, got the truth telling that's taking place, which is just amazing work that the Rook are doing at the moment. Adelaide, South Australia are doing some really great stuff with the voice. But it's all part of that journey of healing. Stolen generations, there's still reparations happening at the moment where people are putting their cases forward and being heard. Look, it's a genuine journey of healing, and we can all walk it together. But we've got to, us as a broader community need to listen and learn and understand what is still taking place, and it filters down through the generations today.
Yeah, I think that's such a key point, is just listen and learn, and respect as well. Is just build those relationships and understand. I know when I did university, I think one of the great initiatives that in my course, and I think it's in every course, and this was at Deakin, where it was mandatory to do at least 2 First Nations orientated units, and I actually got to learn so much, because it's one of the oldest. I think it is the oldest culture in the world. So it's there's so much to learn and so much to respect and be proud of, and I think that's the biggest thing, is just listening and learning.
Yeah, listening and learning is key, and it does still. People don't have that understanding. The oldest living cult, like we think about pyramids, 5,000. Geez, that's old, but no, we're generalising. We're saying 60,000 years of culture, but it's well beyond that. We know that, and so you're talking about people who were here around dinosaurs, and to put it in that context, we're still finding remains that are 80,000 years, artifacts, stone carvings, and you're right, we should be celebrating this. Some of our forests in our country is one of the oldest rainforests in the world.
The Daintree.
The Daintree. We've got so much to celebrate as all together in the community and we should be tapping into, and the history, the storytelling, the stolen generation and past government, historic past grief and loss. We do need to talk about that too, because that truth telling, that journey of healing is so important to people. Getting that acknowledgement and recognition of that's taken place. Only then can we start moving towards, as a community together.
Yeah, definitely. You can't bury your head in the sand, can you? You have to face it. Yeah, definitely. So if you could see one big shift in how Australia supports and recognises First Nations people, what would it be?
Yeah, I think the direction in terms of we celebrate people in sport, First Nations. Yep, that's great. Sport's great. It brings people together. But we've got so many people at academic levels who have achieved so much in business. We should be celebrating that as well, like not just the sporting. We've got some very knowledgeable, highly trained people out there in the community, and we just got to tap into it and celebrate that. The direction should be that we all should work towards that listening and learning together,
Yeah.
but making sure that Aboriginal voices and Torres Strait Islander voices are heard and have an active role in decision making. We're getting better at that. I think governments are getting slowly better at, particularly around funding local organisations to local First Nations organisations to work through their business. But yeah, we really need people in those leadership roles where they can be part of the decision making.
Yeah, definitely. I guess my final question, and I could sit here and talk to you for hours, James. Honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure. And before I ask this question, I do want to say that James does so much in an organisational context and a community context where you can actually learn so much. You're always out there doing different bits and pieces with organisations and stuff. So you've got your yarn up and all that sort of stuff. So if there's ever anyone, if there's ever you ever get the chance to actually go to one of James's sessions, please do. You'll learn so much, and you're very, very good at what you do. And obviously for anyone listening here, we're always available to support you. So you don't actually have to be part of Convergence EAP. James can actually support your organisation, with various different services. So please get in touch if you do want to sort of tap into those services. And like I said, if you are ever able to actually attend one of these sessions, please do. It's honestly, it's mind blowing how good you are at your job, James. Honestly.
Oh, thanks, mate. I really
definitely.
appreciate that.
Of course. So, what's one small action people can take throughout the year? And that's not just NAIDOC Week or Reconciliation Action Week. It's every week and every day to support First Nations communities meaningfully.
Yeah, we can support in so many ways. We can firstly hire people, First Nations people. We can buy First Nations support. So there's a lot of First Nations businesses out there. I talked about Supply Nation. If you wanted to look up that, there's a whole list of national First Nations businesses there. Look at your procurement strategies. You might want to start looking at buying in First Nations support if you don't have the staff already, or you could do a bit of a hybrid as well. And being able to change your viewpoint, your business viewpoint, that First Nations business is everybody's business. If we all just take part and make it part of our work strategy, and at all levels, from procurement, employment, at every level, being able to include that throughout our business, I think that's probably the way to go. Yeah. And I did say culture first, business last. Honestly, the business will come. We dipped our toe in the water 5 or 6 years ago in the First Nations space. I'm so glad we did. And it's been a great investment in terms of personal investment, as well as a business investment and a community investment. And it doesn't take a lot of effort to get a good name out there. A good name doesn't mean you do everything right. It's okay to fumble and drop the ball, but you've got to learn from the people, and that's the First Nations people. They'll soon tell you when you do fumble and drop the ball, and that's a good thing. So it's not all, particularly if you're a mainstream non-Indigenous organisation, it's a little bit scary to dip your toe in the water, but once you do, you don't look back, and it's the way to reach, build those partnerships and connections with people and communities, and you get some really good outcomes along the way, and that's what we're here for.
Definitely. And I think then once you actually have that, you have a training model, you have, mandatory awareness training, things like that, it then trickles down into everyone, and then everyone learns and is able to,
Yes.
Acknowledge, respect, and understand, the challenges and celebrate all the achievements that First Nations people have made, and the strides that have been made, and also respecting that there is more that needs to be done, at every level. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, Thank you so much, James. I've genuinely really appreciated this chat and this time. It's been, definitely learned a lot, and I know our viewers and listeners will have learned a lot. So, if there's anything that we've talked about today where you might need some support, there's definitely supports out there. I'll leave some links in the show notes for everyone to check out. And at the same time as well, Converge also offers a specialist helpline for all First Nations people. So please feel free to access that. If we're your workplace wellbeing provider, we're always on hand to give you that support. Again, thank you so much, James. And that's been our 11th episode of Thrive, and I will see you next month for our 12th episode. And that would actually be our 1 year anniversary. So, a lot to celebrate. So, brilliant. Thank you again, James, and see you again soon.